Dana, it's great to have you today. Dana is the Chief Sales and Marketing Officer at United Direct Solutions. Great to have you on the show.
Thanks, Royce. Great to be here.
Yeah. Well, Dana, one of the things I noticed, from your LinkedIn profile, you've been in sales, marketing, operations for a long time, and I just think we think about RevOps. There's a lot of conversation about RevOps these days. I mean, you've been in RevOps before people were calling it RevOps. So I'd love to hear kind of like your origin story. How'd you get into that? And like what you've learned along the way.
Sure, absolutely. I could talk about RevOps and generating activities all day, every day, as we were talking about prior to getting started. And for me, the joy of growing and building started right after undergrad when I was considering where would I put my time and the talents that I had developed to that point, right? And who was going to invest in me and help me to grow in those skills and those talents. And I was fortunate to matriculate in 1998, which was right between some various downturns that the economy had been facing. So I was very fortunate to graduate at a boom time. So I had quite a few offers, and for me, what really resonated was organizations that were willing to invest in me and my training. And so I got to try on all different kinds of departments and processes when I joined Quad Graphics in 1998 because Harry Quadracci, who founded the company, believed in that. And so he had a very robust executive training program that I was a part of. And so from jump, I was participating in the education of growth, and with that, understanding operationally the entire enterprise. And so I've kept that as part of the way that I operate in various organizations, whether I'm volunteering my time on a board or advising startups, or in the work that I do today at United Direct Solutions, which is very much so RevOps, as you said. And so for RevOps, especially in a world like ours that has a manufactured element, right? We have print and mail, what we would consider our legacy business that we've been doing for a long, long time. And we couple that with marketing, operations, automation, technology, data modeling, and data analytics, all of that front end and then wrap around back end services to help customers understand who their best clients are, help them find more of them, and then give them the right communication at the right time to inspire action. And whether that's existing customers and you want to, build wallet share and make sure that they are educated in what's going on with their interactions with you, or again, like looking for your next best customers, we do all of that. And so making sure that operations and revenue generating activities are perfectly aligned, or as aligned as they could possibly be, is really the linchpin for how we make sure that things are running smoothly and turning around a common axis.
That's really interesting. I think it's really interesting. You called out that with United Direct, that's direct mail solutions, right? That's something
Absolutely.
that's
It's
like,
part of what we do.
yeah. So that's not like that's not your AI, like that didn't pop up. That's a mature business. So
Certainly is. It
you know
certainly is.
one of the things I was thinking about was like how do you stay um, how do you stay competitive, and how do you like stay differentiated and forward thinking in a business that's matured, and like I think a lot of people that I talk to are like, hey, it's email, it's social, like that's how you get clients.
Right.
And like direct mail, that's like, oh, have we thought about that for a bit,
Yes. For us, it's a couple of things. It's being output agnostic. It is also back to that learning and that learning ethos. We never stop learning around here. The minute you stop learning, you stop growing, and you become stagnant, and that's dangerous. And so we have a mindset here at UDS, and any company I've been a part of, if it starts to shift to a rigidity of this is what we do, and we are resistant to change, I know it's a time for me to move on or start something on my own. And so UDS very much so has today and has for the last 40 plus years of operation a curiosity and a desire to understand both from our own work of attending conferences and participating in organizations and associations that our best customers are a part of, so we understand what's going on in their industry, in addition to knowing what's going on in the various industries that we're buying from, right? Think technology partners, think manufactured, OEMs, where we're buying the equipment we need to do that legacy business, and sort of everybody in between, because there's all of this integration and connective tissue that has to happen between the technology platforms and whatever output, whether it stays in a digital state or is actually printed and mailed, or both, because most of our clients are utilizing omni-channel campaign structures. And that's true of existing business as well, like where if it's a big brand, because we're working with large brands that are primarily direct to consumer. And so for us, we have to understand the best ways for them to communicate with those customers. And that's changing all the time. And there's so much information. And so we have to be very aware of, at the end of the day, we are the communication execution partners for our clients to their customers. We're that connective tissue. So we have to be as strong as we possibly can. And we must be nimble and flexible in order for that to happen in a really meaningful way. Because we're stewards of their budget. We're stewards of their brand. And so we have to show up in those ways and be willing to maneuver as the markets shift and change. I mean, just in the last quarter, we're all global, managing through a lot of shifts and shocks. Not sure if they're all shocks just yet, but they're definitely shifts at this point. And we have to be nimble and flexible to market conditions. We all lived through COVID 5 years ago, thankfully. And so, yeah, we have a desire to make sure that we are always at the cutting edge, as close to the cutting edge as we possibly can be. Does that answer your question, Royce?
Yeah, I think that's a great answer, and I think it brings up another question of like,
Sure.
How have things changed? Like as you mentioned, like the past 5 years have just been like a whirlwind of like, what's going on now, and you think about you referenced current events, like we have the trade war with China, and manufacturing, like that's a really tough sector to be in right now. So what is changing, and how do we just not how do we stay on top of that instead of just being like folding up shop, I'm done.
No, sticking your head in the sand is not an option. Not for people like me, at least. And I'm sure for people like you and your listeners, no way. So forward is the only way out. And so for us, it's where can we fine tune? Where can we be more efficient? And where can we make more sense of all this data? Because no one's going to have less data, right? That we're never gonna sort of go back to a time where we're not collecting and gathering data. And so for us, it's very important that we understand how to synthesize the data that we control, but also have tools and platforms available for our clients to make sense of their data, or to take the data that they have synthesized on their own, or that they've come to a certain point, and then they can use us to help them fine tune so that they're talking to the right people at the right time with the right message, right? And that they're able to be nimble and flexible as those messages need to shift and change. And so for us, what that looks like in practice, we have a chief information officer, a chief strategy officer, a chief sales and marketing officer, and myself, a chief operating officer, CFO, CEO. We all are working together all the time on the big stuff, the big visionary stuff. And then individually, like in my department, I'm looking to fine tune for the sales team. How can we put platforms in place for you that make you smarter and faster to respond? Because if you're able to utilize all that data that's flying around, we can be in a better position to serve our clients faster with better information. And so some of the tools that we're using right now that are primarily AI, in their nature, we use Gong as our recording partner and translator of meetings. And so Gong has been around for a very long time. They were one of the first. And so they have a large language model that's just simply bigger than everybody else's, and specifically designed for sales enablement. So it allows me to also be in a lot of places at the same time. So as a sales leader, I don't feel the need to add additional layers within the organization. So again, we can be very lean, and also very effective. So we don't want to be budget conscious and, growth shy. We want them to coexist together. And so utilizing platforms like Gong, in your world, CRMs, like we're about to upgrade our CRMs so that we can have better connectivity to all of these other platforms. We're using Crystal Knows, which is, are you familiar with Crystal Knows?
I do, yeah.
Ah, oh my gosh, so huge, right? Uses the Disc platform for us to have, we have integrations with LinkedIn and Outlook. So it's providing you additional information based on data out in the world of how do you want to bring information to that person? How do we think they will respond, and better prepare ourselves so that we can accelerate the sales process and have better, bigger deals. And again, so like we can do more with the same amount of incredibly smart people. And that's where technology comes into play for us. So it's not about, replacing people or whatever. It's about making those investments that you already have produce more for you without stressing the system so much that everybody's like, burnt out. Because, in your world with CRM, it's intended to ride along and enable the sales process to be smarter, faster, right? More productive. And so for us, that's the lens that we place on every decision is how can we support the sales team to do what they do with ease and with precision and with speed? Because boy, the minute you put something in place like that, everyone's like, woohoo!
Yeah.
I have more. It's not perceived as a threat.
Right.
It's not perceived as, oh, someone's looking over my shoulder to, nitpick my day with a CRM. Because I'm sure you've heard that many, many times. And it's then once you do that and you involve teams in those decisions, now they have buy-in and they are more likely to use it and to use it effectively, and for everybody to benefit from that type of implementation.
Yeah, and I love that. I at least in the B2B world, maybe it's different in the B2C where you can go to a website and directly buy something. But in the B2B world, and I guess even in that use case, until we have bots buying from bots, like it's the person's got to be involved. And I love that. Like, how are we using AI? Like, we are using AI to enhance people and to make them more powerful, especially in those B2B roles, make them more powerful in conversations. I love the Crystal Knows, like, you can get to know the person a little deeper before you ever talk to them, and tailor your approach, based on, the perception of their personality. And it just gives you a little more edge, but it's all human centric. It's all personal centric. And it's not just, hey, I'm going to make a bot so that it can go sell for me while I sleep. Like,
right.
That's not what it's about.
And I'm sure there's a place for that for us. Yes, we're B2B. We are very much so relationship oriented in the way that we sell and the way that we continue. Like, I have this phrase, land and expand. And so that's very much so a part of our selling cycle is that, and we're working with brands, very sensitive data, so personal health and personal financial information. Mm-hmm. No one gives that over willingly or easily, in the sense of there's lots of vetting. There has to be a lot of trust built. And for us, 100%, that has to start in the very first interactions that you have with someone. And if something like Crystal Knows can help you to communicate the information that you were already going to communicate in a way that is received more trusting, or that is received in a way that that listener prefers to receive information, great. But it's the same information, to your point. There's no, huckster changing things. It's simply, how does that person receive information, or at least give me 80% of the way that they'll probably receive the information, and then you can adjust accordingly.
Yeah. Well,
and the same applies to our internal team. So we use Crystal Knows internally as well, so that we can also be better communicators internally with our teammates. If someone prefers, give me the details and give them to me right away, ease up on the chit chat in the beginning, but you may frustrate them. And vice versa. If you're a high D person, maybe ask someone about themselves prior to just throwing a bunch of details at them, because that receiver may perceive it differently. And so again, we're seeing within the organization, utilizing those kinds of tools is helping us to be a better communicating team within the organization, which obviously accelerates, processes all over the place. And frankly, makes you really appreciate coming to work every day. So culture has it's an incredibly important part of what we do around here is not so much managing culture, but making sure that we are making decisions and utilizing tools and putting forth, training and experiences that support the culture that we've built, and listening to employees to make sure that we're meeting their needs and that we're providing the right kind of environment for them to really excel and become their best, the best version of themselves.
That's awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, maybe we could take a couple of moments and just focus on a couple of things that you've kind of learned along your path. Like, what are maybe 2 or 3 things that either like you wish you knew when you were younger, or like you could go back and tell your younger self if you had like a DeLorean where you could go do that, or maybe somebody who's listening who's starting their career. What are some words of wisdom or aha moments that you've had along the way?
Sure. Oh, so many. Let's see. So as a late 40s female professional who has been on several leadership teams, I can say with my whole heart that all of the internal training that I did, meaning understanding how my brain works, understanding what emotional regulation is, understanding that perception is reality, right? Understanding some of what would be considered soft skills were not necessarily feminine, they were entirely human. And at various points earlier in my career, especially working in and around manufacturing and almost always in what would be considered male-dominated industries, there was a stigma around some of that earlier in my career. And I would love to be able to nurture my younger self and say, keep going, because she did for some, for most of, but also resist the desire to fit in so much because people didn't look like you. They had different experiences and their priorities were slightly different than yours. Speak up and continue with because today there's so much more awareness and acceptance of those types of what we would call soft skills, and a recognition that kind of work is indeed what builds cultures, and it is indeed what creates people's magnetism and their desire to work together, which is very much so sales. It is very much so influence. And I now have this mantra of everyone's in sales, because many, many times as a younger person and being in sales and loving it, you would hear from people who weren't in sales this kind of dismissive nature of it, or salespeople just go to lunch. Salespeople are just flitting around with expense checks and going to parties, and that there's somehow not a serious process or a lot of organizational structure to sales. And I would internalize that too much as a younger person. And then I realized later, everybody's in sales, right? Everybody's selling something. You're selling an idea, right? You're selling your experience for that next job. You're pitching your business, right? Everyone is in sales at some point. And once I realized that, I thought, oh, okay, so people will say things, but that's not, the process of sales. You understand. And so now in this leadership position, I feel a sense of duty, really, to continue to educate the people around me, whether it's outside of my organization, occasionally internally, about the process of sales. There is very much so a process around, as you well know, in your CRM world, and helping to bring younger generations into that world. It's an incredibly rewarding career path. And I think that higher education and, various other areas where people get their training would very much so benefit from more structured sales process training. Because again, that's translatable to getting your first job. That's translatable to how do you influence people to move around in the corporation? And frankly, how do you sell so that you can feed yourself and have an income, right? What does that look like? Or start your own business, which I think is a really beautiful thing for people to think about.
Yeah. Well, that really hits a lot of nerves for me. Like I think of my own self, and like I think what you shared is very similar to my own journey. Like I remember when I was in college, I was very studious. Like you can see my bookcase
Yes.
over here and everything.
Okay. Yeah, I was an English major.
Yeah, so like I'm very studious, and I just focused on that. And I'm like, okay, if I'm like making good grades and like I'm writing and I'm being thoughtful and everything, the rest is gonna work out. And like I wasn't a partier, and like I kept to myself way too much.
Yes.
And like I realized like once I started getting out into the job force, like what a disservice I had done to myself by not making those connections and just assuming like academia itself is going to take care of me, and like
Mm-hmm.
downplaying the human element in all of this. And I think of people who are trying to get into whether that's sales or tech, or they're trying to get their first job or their next job. We often look at ourselves like, well, I don't have all the qualifications that are on this job listing. It's like, there's a point where you can kind of ignore that. It's like, okay, what influence do you have with the people that are there? Like, can you reach out and build a bond with the people that are part of the company that you want to be in, that are part of the industry that you want to be in, and build that rapport and use those soft skills that to propel you forward? And that's how I've gotten multiple jobs.
100%. I mean, listen, if I'm the smartest person in the room, I'm in the wrong room. And so for me, that shifting to a point where I recognized that the vulnerability of not having all the answers was indeed a path forward if I understood and had the confidence in everything else you just said, right? I had invested in myself. I had been studious. I'm constantly aware of the newness of what's happening in the industries that we serve, and understanding cultural references and sort of being a citizen of the world was helpful and is helpful in building your confidence and saying, when you are in those leadership positions or when you're on your way up, asking questions, saying, that is really interesting. Tell me more about that. And you don't have to already know about absolutely everything in order to be a leader. And in fact, I think the best leaders and the most endearing leaders who people really want to follow are the ones who continue to have curiosity and recognize that they are very, very good at a lot of things, but they're not experts at everything. And if you've hired people smarter than you in these various areas, well, there's a recipe for success, right? Because you can listen to them, you can learn and trust, hey, these people are incredibly smart in these areas. And look at this, we're all a big team of experts in different areas who also know how to talk to each other and respect each other's work. And that is an area, a place that I think, I know for me, we've gotten there. It's never perfect. It's not always cherries and chocolates. We're all humans. And when you find yourself in a leadership position or working for an organization that does have most of that, oh man, congratulations. It feels really good. And I see your Traction book behind you. We've been using Traction for 8 years now, and I can't say enough great things about that leadership style and that way of running an organization. It has been an incredibly useful part of the growth at United Direct Solutions specifically. And I have to say, I think the growth of our leadership team and our ability to manage multiple projects and also understand what everybody else is working on. Again, to that sense of understanding and respecting people's contributions, because it gives you a platform and a process with which to make those decisions together and honor and respect other people's work.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, Dayna, thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it. I appreciate all the insights that you've given me. I really appreciate that. Before we jump off here, how can people connect with you, find you, learn more about what you're doing?
Absolutely. I'm Dayna Neumann. That's Dayna, Neumann, as we were talking about earlier. And I know you'll
I'll put a
flash that
link.
up.
I'll put a link
Yep.
on the
So
YouTube.
find me on LinkedIn. I love to do some LinkedIn videos, interact with me there. And you can find us at udsolutions.com. And I'm always open for a conversation. You never know where the next big idea is going to come from. Thanks, Royce. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Dayna.